All right, I'll just get right into it. Just a little background. We are a national biodiversity platform. We've been funded by the Australian government. We've been funded quite well by the Australian government. You can see some basic stats here. The key thing down here is that we are strong, even fiercely open data, open source, open infrastructure. We've built a platform, people can use it. People we don't even know have come in and tapped into our APIs, tapped into our web services, and are doing things. We're all very strongly about just making things available for free. We have a dashboard that kind of shows how things, these are a couple days out of date, but we've got over 60 million occurrence records. A nice thing is that over 7.2 billion records have so far been downloaded to support a variety of activities such as research, education, conservation, environmental assessment. So if one of the things about an open data thinking is data reuse is good, on average every record in the atlas has been downloaded about 120 times. This is very good. We think of ourselves, this is just kind of overview stuff, but we're basically about data, get data together, integrating it. We don't own any data ourselves, but we bring it together and integrate it, and then help people find it, analyze it, have looks at it, visualize it, and hopefully we'll by doing that, we'll have some outcomes in some very key areas that are important to people. For the most part, to now, we've been focusing mainly on occurrence data, but we want to bring a variety of different types of data together that then add value and give you better ability to do assessments and analyses. So trait data is our next big step. And we get this directly from this community, really, as one of the most important things we can do is bring in trait data. So whether it's species interactions, whether it's morphology, bring this in and make it available for people to do analyses and make the tools better. Now, I think it's important always to ask, why are we doing this? This isn't just about, oh, we're having fun and look, this is cool infrastructure. I'm pretty firmly convinced that some of our next big challenges of the next few decades are going to be around sustainability, food security, sustainable livelihoods. You can see a list of things here. We have an imperative to understand and document nature at a rate that gives us an informed response to human activity. I know it sounds kind of trite, but that's why we're doing it. We need to have informed decisions if we're going to get it right going into the future. And that's what we're trying to do, is build a platform that helps people make these decisions. So briefly, we do lots of things. There are three main things we do. One is we give you information about species. The second is we tell you what lives in a given area. And then the third is we provide some visualization and analysis tools. So going through these very quickly, if you go and browse your species, you can come to a species page that looks like this. You'll have a picture. You'll have just a heat map of these occurrence records. You might have a sound. If there's any conservation status that you have to worry about at a global level or in specific states, we'll tell you that. And we have a variety of things here. We can go to a gallery and you'll see lots of pictures. We have them separated. These are pictures actually from collections, just normal images. Names, classification are extremely important to us. We work closely with AVRS, Judy's branch over in parks, to work on national species list, and we're not trying to invent our own names list. That would be stupid. We want to use the one that's kind of official for Australia and integrate it and bring it in. So we work to do that, and names and classification. And we can even link to things like sequence data. We don't handle it ourselves, but we can link you to it and show you where it is. You can record a sighting. If you see one of these in your garden, you can come out, you can just record a sighting, take a picture or not, and put it in the atlas. You can ask for an alert. If you're interested in the spread of cane toad across northern Australia, you could go and ask for an alert, and every time a new record of cane toad comes in, you'll get an email. So there's a lot of services that we provide around species here. There's the report a sighting type of thing. If you take a picture of it on a smartphone or smart camera, you just drag the drag the file onto this pad right here, and it'll pull all the EXIF information out. So it'll tell you the date, the location, just automatically populates all that stuff for you if your camera's enabled in that way. The next thing we do is we'll give you information about what lives in a certain area. And there's lots of ways that we can do this. There's lots of different ways to put an area on the map. The main ones are just type in your address. So this is, I use this slide because these are headquarters for NCRIS. They're the guys that give us money, so it's nice to be able to go to them and say, look, here's something that might appeal to you. But if you put this dot on a map in Canberra, and what you'll see is in a 5-kilometer radius, there's 6,700 species that have been recorded. Now this is an area that's recorded more than most because here's Black Mountain, the Botanic Gardens, lots of CSIRO people working here, lots of records, but this gives you an idea, and you can click down. So here's just reptiles, for example. Here you can pick on one. You can pick just brown snake records, for example. Here's the records of brown snakes near where you live, and they'll come from collections, they'll come from ones. This one, there's one right about there that's a record where my cat dragged a live brown snake into our house. So, then you have this, a bit of an adrenaline moment, remove cat from snake, remove snake from house, record sighting in the atlas. I mean, it's a nice workflow there, but you're allowed to put these things in and contribute. When I first started playing with the atlas, I mean, they had one record of a redback spider between Canberra and Sydney. There was only, 2 records of it in Canberra. It's one of the most common things in every garage. So I just started recording records around my house when I saw them, like 10 times the records. So the point here is we're nothing without data. We could be fancy infrastructure, but if people aren't putting stuff in and we don't have data, we really don't have much to offer. But you can come back and you can view all the records. And once you do that, then it gives you records and you can start playing with them. You can filter them. You can look at them. So what I've done here, here's all the records. And I could ask for, show me just the orchids. Show me something else. I'm going to ask for just the endangered species and their common names. There's the endangered species that are recorded in that area. So very quickly, if someone was going to put a supermarket down at the end of your street, you could come on and take a quick look and say, hey, it gives you a quick way to get some idea of what's out and around there. And once I've got those records, I can, again, map them, do what I want with them. We have lots of predefined regions. Same thing, where it's already defined states and territories, biogeographic regions. We have marine IPAs, indigenous regions, marine regions. We got stuff that comes from off the coast. If I was to hit this one, I get the same thing as I did the other way. So many records, a lot more species, but I could, again, start filtering. I could explore by date here. Lots of ways I could look at the data and start playing with it. But mapping and analysis is where I think we really get fun, really start being ahead of the game. So you can start in the spatial portal, you can bring things in. Now every one of these dots is live now. I could click on any dot and it would give me the record behind it. I could look at the record, I could see who collected it, where it's from. I could make a note saying I think this record's bogus. Here's one out in the middle, away from everything else. I could say this misidentification or whatever. We actually have about 40 different data cleaning tools that run over every record. And we'll pick up outliers and things like that and make a note on the record. So if you go to the record, you can see there's a note there. These, just as an example, these are all the dots for the genus Dacelo. These are kookaburras. And what it's done is you take all those dots, put them out, and then just sort by species name, and you'll see how the 2 species fall out around Australia. Very quick visualization to show. These are just all the endangered species up in Kakadu. Again, it takes a minute or 2 to put these together, and you have a look at what's out there. And once I clicked on one of them, I clicked on one over here. It's some kind of rock boa or something. By clicking there, it circles all the records for that species over here. So you can see very quickly where it fits out. I can add things to the map. I can add species. I could add groups of species. I could add all marsupials and look at those. I could add areas. We have 450 geospatial layers, could be elevation, temperature, something like that. These are all things that we can do to help people analyze stuff. So Here's a climate layer. I've asked for, I can look for temperature. I'm going to add just annual max mean temperature, and I get something like this. It's an overlay on the map. What I could do now, which is of interest, is I could come and I could click on a dot on a map. So here I've put a dot. Remember this, near Wagga. And you can see that for this layer, the annual mean temperature is just around 22 degrees. We'll call it 22 for the purpose of this. But you can get that figure anywhere. So now we know that that's the temperature out there. We'll come back to that. This is just a maxent running on current koala distributions and the climate layers that are predicted for 2030. And what you see very quickly is that there are lots of the current distribution that's maybe going to be in marginal areas in the not too distant future. So lots of tools to help you play with things. This is called a scatter plot. And what it does is we take all these dots, distribution dots, and we map them in environmental space. So this is just, we've put two variables, rainfall and temperature. Ask for rainfall and temperature for every one of those dots. They're plotted out here. I put this box here, which says where are all the low rainfall, high temperature ones. Once I draw that box, it circles every dot in that box over here on the map. So I could start quickly taking a look and say how are environmental variables potentially affecting distribution and things. And I can add an area to the map in a lot of ways. There are like 14 different ways that I could do it. I could just draw a polygon. I put it on anywhere on the map, and once I've done that, I ask for an area report under Tools. I'll come up and give me a report for that area. Any area that I draw on the map, I ask for a report. Here's the number of species there, number of occurrences. I could download all those records and analyze them. I can look at invasive species, threatened species, migratory species. I can ask for endemic species if I want. Lots of ways to come in, put some information and ask for it. And I can define areas that are defined environmentally. So this area is anything with an elevation over 1,500 meters. So I could just define an area that way, put it on the map and say, now I'm looking at all my alpine and subalpine species, how many of these are endemic, and start getting a list of those or playing with it that way. Being able to put environmental areas, environmentally defined areas on the map gives you a couple of extra things that you can do. So yeah, here's just the area report for this, including somewhere your number of endemic species, or actually it doesn't include that, but it could include that on a different slide. But so coming back to the Wagga example, if we look at the current temperature and rainfall for this area, temperature's about 22 and rainfall's about 550. Now what we want to do is do a re-veg program here. We're going to convert some old farmland, we're going to re-veg it. Do we want to re-veg it according to today's climate, or what we're thinking the climate might be like in 20 or 30 years? What's our best option for thinking about revegetation? What's our best strategy? So let's predict that the temperature is going to go up a little bit and the rainfall is going to go down. I don't know if it will or won't. But if we wanted to predict that, then we throw on a temperature layer, which is this brown one. We throw on a rainfall layer that we've defined, which is this green one. And we might look to source seed or plants for revegetation from here rather than here, because that might give us a better chance for optimizing our revegetation strategies. I don't know if it will or won't, but these are the kind of things that you can start playing with the tools that are available to you in the Atlas to support making decisions in conservation. This is what we're really about, the informed decision making that might help us deal with human impact. I'm just going to use one more example, which isn't quite as maybe scientific, but I think has some practical value. These brown dots here are Eucalyptus camaldulensis, red river gum, and this is, in addition to being a widespread plant in Australia, this is the most widely grown commercial plantation tree in the world. And it supports sustainable livelihoods in many areas of the world, many developing countries. This is really critical to the way a lot of people live. Now there's a little pest of this, one of these lerp psyllids that comes in and attacks the tree and doesn't do much damage in Australia because there's natural enemies. But if it goes overseas where it has gone, it creates a huge problem. Now, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine from Brazil, got a grant to come over and study this lerp because of the damage that it was doing to Australia, the reds, the lerp psyllid distribution. And without looking at something like this a few years ago, she didn't know about it. She said, I got a year's worth of money, and she went and she arranged a year postdoc with Jonathan Major over in Perth. Now, if she'd have thought about this, if she'd have looked at this, she'd have realized that wasn't a good decision because there's none of these psyllids here. She'd be better off in Orange or somewhere here on the West Coast or the East Coast. So this is the kind of thing where even just a 5-minute play might have changed a decision. And while this seems like a bit of an academic exercise or something, this is the effect of this pest in Brazil, where you've got resistant trees here and susceptible trees here. This isn't just an academic exercise. This can affect people's lives. So if the atlas is actually can inform just operational decision making at this level, we're actually doing something pretty good. It's not fancy, it's not research, but we can be helping people's lives. Now, another thing that we've put in the atlas are some follow link. I think Judy was saying, she mentioned this yesterday. So it's a little tool that helps you play with an evolutionary perspective on some of these things. So you're looking at being able to, we don't have very many trees in the atlas, only a few, but you could import your own tree, and if it's got names that match atlas infrastructure, you can import characters, then you could start doing fun things with it. So here's the acacia tree that everyone uses, and it looks like this. If your names are matching, then you can sit here, click on this branch, for example, and go directly to the species page. So, you know, it links very nicely. You could start looking at this. You can pick a given clade here, and for example, pick that clade, and we can map all the taxa in that clade on the map with different colors. So you can see how the species in that clade, you know, just map out and work together on the map. You can add characters, and you can map the characters also, so you can see how the characters map out in space. And, you know, maybe there's some phylogenetic signal to the characters, maybe there isn't. Maybe what you're seeing is evolution responding to environmental change that happens over and over rather than being restricted to a given clade. But another thing we can do with all our environmental layers is you can start looking at the dots on a map and then asking about environmental envelopes for given clades. So this is rainfall. This is these top group of species up here, and you can see they're fairly widely distributed across rainfall regimes. If you come to this one down here, you can see they're not. They're drier specialists, arid zone specialists. Is that phylogenetic signal, or is that something else? Well, that's the kind of thing you can get at by maybe going up and down the clade, see how often these responses occur. But it gives you this ability to start asking questions. Is this an underlying ability that can evolve in many different branches, or is this something that's restricted to certain branches? It just gives you an extra added way of playing with data. We support, at this point, about 70 different hubs and portals on top of the atlas. Probably the biggest one's Australian Virtual Herbarium. We have OzCam. We have small things, large things. We deliver to virtual laboratories. This is one that's Atlas of Prehistoric Australia. This is a portal that someone else is coming in, managing data and stuff, but it's built on our infrastructure. It's actually pretty cool, though it could do with a few more records and images and stuff. That would be nice. But it's the kind of thing where if you're dealing with specific group of data or something you want to manage your own data, we can give you a space to do that, and that will, A, contribute your records to the bigger atlas, give you ability to look at atlas records that complement yours, and just manage your own data in the way you like. Does it have to be, you know, it could be, here's a biocontrol type of one, a weed spotter. Here's a small research project around yellow box. variety of things, and we've just created this tool called BioCollect, which really makes it a bit easier for communities to have a spot on the atlas where they can manage data, contribute it, have a spot to share things. You could put up news, you could put up resources, PDFs, PowerPoints, whatever you want about what you're doing, newsletters, get people involved. It's a way for people to manage their data on top of Atlas infrastructure. Also, this includes a citizen science project finder in BioCollect, so there's about 200 plus different citizen science projects around biodiversity information going on in Australia right now, so you could just come in, and if you're interested in getting involved, some are ongoing, some have ended, but you can have a look and look at them and get involved if you want to. This is just an example of a game where someone came and built it on top of Atlas infrastructure. You know, this isn't ours, but it's the ability of open infrastructure. Someone can come in and start building tools and games and things, and people could come in and have a play. And again, this is a Nectar Lab, the Biodiversity and Climate Change Virtual Laboratory. They've built it, but they pull a lot of our data in to support it. In a way, it's a bit like our spatial portal. They've got tools for analyzing data specific to climate change, so people can come in, suck in our data, our records, and have a play. Now, some of the other things we do, it's a big list. And we also, particularly some of the things we want to go to, trait data is a big one. We keep hearing this, the idea. Right now we have a mobile app, so I can go out, press a button, and say, I'm at this space, show me a list of all the parrots. And I get their pictures. But if we had trait data, I could sit here and say, show me a list of all the birds with red heads. And that would facilitate my being able to identify things. We right now could go and say, well, in this area we've got 400 bees and 200 orchids, but we don't have any idea of the relationship or who's pollinating whom, that kind of thing. So having some of this trait data gives you a much advanced ability to understand what's going on. This is just coming back to, it's still very demo-ish, but working on an eFlora ability, the idea of having dynamic monographs that at this point partially will be live feeds from the Atlas around some of the information, partly will still be profile information put in by experts, but creating these pages that will come in and allow people to have eFloras, build a national one that can be chopped up and used at a state or even local level if you want. But it gives you a much greater ability than producing these mighty tomes that then might sit for years not getting updated. This gives us a much more dynamic approach to delivering information as people need it. And as we build in identification guides and tools and things like that, it'll make hopefully a very nice package. Now, one of the things that I did want to talk about is this whole idea of putting natural history collections online. There's around 60 million specimens in Australia with 2 to 3 billion worldwide. Imagine having some of those, maybe not all of them, but some of them online so that you could, anyone, anywhere, anytime could just go on, have a look at something. Oh, I think I have this species. What's it look like, you know? Making that available. That's one of the things that we want to do. We've had a little bit of a start at it. So here are some of the specimen images from some of Australia's natural history collections. You can see we've got some local collections up. Here's images from South Australian Museum. You can see up here, people come in, they can have a look. So if you're wondering what a certain beetle, wasp, moth looks like, plant, you might be able to come in and have a quick look at it. You might want to come in and just look at pictures of a group that's interesting to you. You're a quarantine officer, wonder what a fruit fly looks like. Hey, let's have a look. You can come in and scan some quick pictures. Building these image libraries and giving people a chance to learn more about things. And we're maybe getting to a point where you can start tagging some of these images so you know, we could come up with, at times, We could probably, be a bit of an effort, you could probably digitize every herbarium sheet in Australia in a year or two. Insects are a different story, so we're still at the point where we, are doing this kind of like Google Maps where you can take a picture and zoom in. But if we get to the point where someone could come along and maybe do an annotation on this one saying, well, I think this is misidentified, or, I've looked at your specimens, that's the one I'd like to borrow for my research. Very quick way to perhaps improve the quality of curation, or help people decide what they need to borrow without having to borrow 1,000 specimens to get the one or two that they want. So it could improve curation and collection management. But from my perspective, these images are nice, they're pretty, but I really only to some extent care. It's what we do with the images after we generate them, because what we want to do, if you're thinking about trade information, it's not just having image libraries, it's getting information from those image libraries that's computable, that you can integrate with other information types, that you can discover and share and make available and reusable to the community. That's what's important. And if you can drop those, somehow get that information into trait banks, underlying trait banks that could support taxonomy, dynamic monographs, dynamic keys, then you've done something that's starting to get a bit special. So just as a simple example, I don't even know if this tool's live or still testing, we've got a little measurement tool, and you can come in and you could just draw a line here, and you can see a couple of measurements, and you can actually go through a drawer of dragonflies like that and take those measurements, and what they've seen is they're just as accurate as if you tried to pick the specimen up and hold a ruler on it like this. They're actually probably a little more accurate. So, it's a quick way of gathering information. We're not storing this information yet, which is bad. But the idea is, you can see that where we're heading to is gathering that information, someone taking that measurement once and dropping it in a data matrix. This would be very good. Now, if this works, we're going to try we'll try doing our off to the web, several add-ons. I don't want them. I'm not going to enable them. I don't know if this will show me anything. And so there we go. So this is a beetle. Some kind of weevil, I imagine. But I'm a wasp guy, so I really don't care. I shouldn't say that. Weevils are a fantastic group, for those that don't know them. But there's a nice 3D image, so if somebody wants to know what that beetle looks like, they could come in, take a picture, or just have a look. Oh, I want to look underside, I will look at the top side. You can see how useful that might be. But again, from my perspective, pretty picture, so what? I mean, it's nice, you can give it to a quarantine officer or something, but it's getting information from that picture that to me is really going to be interesting. So what I've talked about in the past to some extent is what the atlas does. This is stuff we don't do yet. This is where we would like to be in 5 years, is heading this direction. This is something developed by some colleagues at CSIRO that actually puts these 3D pictures in a URL that allows you to do and start playing with them. You can see there's a scale bar all around it. You can come in and flip it around, and you can see tools. I can take a measurement now. I can paint a part. I could, paint and label the foreleg. I could come to a certain view and zoom in on a certain structure, and I could save that view. I could save 2 or 3 views. I could tell a quarantine officer, here are the 3 things you have to see. Press these 3 views, and it'd take it right to it and show up. I could add an SEM to this, for example, to say, click here, you'll see what this character looks like. It's creating the ability to come in, extract or add information to these models to make them more usable to people. And store that information. So here I've taken a measurement, as you can see, and if I look at that measurement down there, it not only gives me the length, it gives me the distance. You can't see them, the distance, but I can actually get a degree of curvature now, knowing these two measurements. So it's the kind of information that can help you a little bit. And there is some information that machines will do better than people. Now, like Eddie said, I'm an entomologist, so I've spent years dealing with keys with these crap characters in them that say, This structure is either distinctly rounded or moderately rounded, or this vein is slightly curved or almost straight, and you have no, machines will actually measure this far better than people will. They'll give you a value, you know. It actually makes some sense. Here I've just painted a character. You can see it's the foreleg. The type of things we can do. Here I've added an SCM on top of the picture behind. This just shows them both. I can zoom in and you just get the SCM picture. But it's the kind of things that you could do in this tool. And again, you could hand an iPad to a quarantine worker and say, if you think you have this, here's the picture, here's the thing, spin around, look at it, and you have to see these three things. It's the kind of thing that can have some outputs. Now, one of the things that really I've thought about quite a bit is what do we really need to do? Well, we were talking about this at breakfast this morning. You know, in the last 100 years, we've named 1 million species, but there's probably 5 to 10 million left. And really, you know, if we care, if we're really want to do what we should be doing, we want to finish up naming those things in about the next half century. We don't have 5 or 6 centuries left to go on them. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we name that next million in 10 years? And we really, sometimes we need to ask, are we driven by what needs to be done, or are we driven by the way we like doing things because it's kind of fun? If you're really interested in informing a response to managing the planet's habitats, then maybe we should think about how we're going to do it in 10 years. And this is going to include machine learning, computer vision, a lot of things that taxonomists may not like to really think about. The questions I was joking about this morning, if we could name 2 million species in the next 2 decades, but it didn't fit into the code, would we still do it? Would we say, oh no, we can't because the code doesn't work? If we can name all life on Earth in 50 years, but individual authors no longer had their names attached to a new species name, would we not do that anymore? So these are the questions we have to ask ourselves, because the goal is inventorying life. And what I've talked about before is showing how people are extracting information. We're still extracting information one by one. You know, you're going on, you're still doing a measurement by hand. It's just on a picture. Or you're still annotating this 3D beetle, but you're still doing it by hand. How can we move that to getting some help doing that, or accelerating the process? And in this, I've been working with some people that actually know what they're doing because they're actually in this area, and we're doing some fun things. One of them, I was going to show this live, but I would have had to hook up my computer and stuff, is you can take a nice picture of a dragonfly, and here's a website that we've created, or they've created, and you can drag and drop this picture here. And what you can then do is you analyze it. And what this has done, it takes about 40 seconds at this point. But remember, this is something no one's ever done before. So I'm not so worried. It's a bit slow, yes. What it's done is it's come up and automatically picked out some characters, and they're different classes. It's picked out a presence or absence. Is the pterostigma present? Yeah, it is. It's counted the number of cross veins in that cell and that cell using what they call junction detection to understand how the veins come in and cross and stuff. So there's 17 in that first one and 12 in the second. It's compared the shape of the front and hind wing, which is a character they use to separate dragonflies and damselflies, and gives you a fairly exact figure here in terms of similarity, and it's measured the forewing length. So this is done all automatically, and that information can now be dropped in, stored in a character matrix. Just a starting point, but it points to where we'd like to be at some point. This is similar for damselfly wings. You can see here a much higher similarity of the wings. And again, something a computer will measure much better than a human will, and it comes out, and you can start getting these type of filling in a character matrix. So the idea would be that at some point, we would like to be able to expand this to where you just take something like that up, take a picture, press a button, and you come up with something like that. And that gives you the, we're a ways off. This isn't going to happen this week. But the idea that you could then use that, once you have that underlying database, it's like the old Delta keys. You could produce natural language descriptions, you could produce keys, you could produce phylogenies. It gives you the starting point. There might be a point in the next decade or so where you could come in, use some of these things, and end up with a manuscript ready to edit rather than a manuscript ready to write based on specimens and collections. That would be part of the goal we're shooting for. Now, we also have, I say we, Australian Museum has been developing this. It sits on Atlas infrastructure, a volunteer portal. And what these guys do, it's actually pretty cool. They've had, you can toss in a, let's see what I have here. No, I don't have. You can take pictures of specimens in your collection and the labels. Volunteers will come in and transcribe your labels and database your collection for you. You can put up an old field journal and they'll type it in so it becomes searchable text. These type of things, and so far they've done 350,000 transcription tasks, which I find a bit odd, but no, people are happy to come on and do that. It's fantastic, but as a test what they did is they tossed some fish in. And they threw in a picture of a fish, and then they asked people, volunteers, to come in and choose 4 characters, just 4 very simple characters. So you choose as many colors as you like. So this one's got some brown and gray and silver. You tag those. Those get recorded. General shape of the fish. Pattern, whether it's spotty or stripy, and shape of the tail. And volunteers came in. You can make some other comments. And basically they were running through about 2,000 images a day. Volunteers were coming in and tagging them. So it may be that while we're still have the need to generate these character databases, but don't quite have some of the other techniques up, we could maybe take advantage of crowdsourcing if we can come up with a set of characters that's fairly easy to understand and accessible to people. There are people that are willing to come in and help build these underlying data matrices. And then again, start giving us the total picture. So just a couple things to finish up. We are a national biodiversity platform, but like the old think globally, act locally, we are involved in a lot of global initiatives where the Australian node of GBIF, we're involved, and we're helping to be part of the thinking that drives some of the global initiatives and what we're wanting to do. Our infrastructure is pretty well world leading. We like to think it is and claim it is, but we now have some support. It has, we've put it kind of ALA in a box. Other countries can just pick it up and now install it fairly easily to use as their national portals. This is Spain's national portal based on ALA infrastructure. France, Scotland's got a really nice one. These are countries that are actually implementing or actively implementing it now. There's several more coming online soon, and maybe even at regional level. So we are fairly well considered globally. And this just in the next 5 years, some of the things we want to do, too crowded to slide, but really bringing in trait data is a key for us. And it's been identified by several communities as something that will make a difference. Creating virtual natural history collection platforms, supporting e-monographs and virtual library environments. These are all things that we want to do that hopefully will make us more relevant to people in the future. And we're always interested in hearing ideas for what people want to do, or any needs or ways that they think we could collaborate. I think that's it for me, and kind of a whiz-through overview, but more than happy to take questions or anything at that point.